you have to seek information. And that goes back to the self-analyzing part. What am I experiencing? Is this normal? Is it not normal? What should I expect after this?
I started to pull away from what other people were telling me, that it's normal. I lost my mom. I started to pull away from that because I realized they didn't lose their mom the way I did. And what I'm feeling cannot be what they felt. Which is why I'm, writing the book, My Grief is Not Like Yours. Because everybody has a grief or a loss of some kind, and no one loss is like the other. We all feel it differently.
Surrounding yourself, seek professional advice, number one. No matter if you feel that you need it or not. Seek professional advice from a counselor, someone who's familiar with the grieving process.
A professional.
It's a must-do. Number two, surround yourself with your friends or your family and someone that can be there to support you.
Right.
And at some point in time, you may feel them start backing off and backing away from you, and you may take that as that you're a burden. You've become a burden to them. You are seeking comfort in somebody, and something changes in that relationship or that bond where they start turning away, and you feel like, oh man, I must have burdened this person with my problems.
I've wore out my welcome.
And but if like in churches they have grief share. And
that's right.
I was asked to join the grief share at my church. And I said, I'm too mad at God to be there. I'm not going to walk in there. And not only that, but I can't communicate with these people because I don't want to detract from their grief because of the magnitude of this, and I don't want to find myself discussing matters about a investigation that nobody needs to. So I'm just like stuck. So.
Yeah. So you almost felt like you had to just grieve privately, if at all.
Yeah, well, except for one-on-one professional type situations
right.
with psychiatrists and things like that. I could, I felt very open and everything.
And free to talk when you were in that setting. But I understand, like, going into a grief share, you're probably sitting there just thinking, these people don't even touch what I'm going through.
Correct. I felt that I felt that immediately, but I didn't. More importantly, it would end up being with people that I've probably known for a long time, and people that had lost their spouse under more acceptable conditions, and I didn't want to detract from that.
Right.
I wanted them to have that opportunity to be around others that have experienced similar levels of grief, of loss in an acceptable manner. You can't really say that, but I mean, nothing that's just.
It's just not as heavy as what has hit. Right. Right now, do you feel more free? Like you're not in an investigation right now. You're not the subject of any investigation, so you feel more free. You can go out and maybe get with groups now. It's been 5 years. Maybe, I don't know, go back to a therapist or counselor. And
well, going back to, I told you earlier that I feel mostly normal. I feel mostly normal, and I can attribute that to, seeking out the advice of counselors. They provided me with some tools. Okay, so I started kind of problem solving this on my own, and I don't really know how. But going back to this thing in my youth where
you were nine
I saw
or 10.
this, and I found a gentleman who's a psychologist, a fairly well known one. I wish I had his name in front of me, but I don't. But I've learned to view this world in a tragic sense, okay? And if you look throughout history and you look at the tragedy, it's tragedy from the start, okay?
Yeah.
If you're raising kids and you're not if you're not at least preparing them to experience or see all of the evil and bad things that go on in this world, you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
You're making a mistake. So when you look at what has happened to you, and yourself included, and you think about all the Jews in the concentration camps, okay? Mm-hmm. A lot of those, they were adults and children, and some of those children live today. And some of those people went through that and lived this unbelievable existence, okay? Far worse than I experienced.
Right, me too.
And some of those individuals became successful in several ways, and are here today to tell the story. So you think about what they've been through. You have to do a comparative of your experience versus some of the more I don't know what you know
horrific, tragic.
Absolutely.
I know.
Absolute.
Yeah.
Worst that humanity could possibly offer.
My mom always said, don't ever think that you know a person because you have no idea what they may have went through. Mm-hmm. And thinking about what you're saying right now, that's absolutely what you're talking about. We've been through some pretty heavy stuff, but there's somebody out there that's been through maybe heavier.
Yep. I think about World War II veterans that saw people getting blown up and just burn up. I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
And I think, I personally didn't experience. What happened to Missy is not something that I don't visualize that.
Right.
Even though I know in my mind I've made up this
pictures. Mm-hmm.
But I don't have anything so graphic that it would burn me and
right.
scar me in the way that it would something like the war veterans and things that have seen some just absolutely atrocious things. So if you really step back and go, okay, this has happened to me, to what degree am I going to allow this to control me and manipulate me in a way that I become less of a person? And so you start putting yourself into perspective. Mm-hmm. And so the whole view of living your life in a tragic sense, it helps with that. And when you do that, when you experience happiness takes on a whole new meaning.
You're right. Have you moved on at all in relationships? Mm-hmm. Had dates? Has that,
Yeah, I've actually remarried.
Oh, have you? Okay.
We all grew up in church, not grew up, but we all went to church with another family, me, Missy, and the kids, and this family. I'm a music person, and their family were music people, and I helped her father do a lot of musical stuff. I recorded an album for him. So we all connected kind of on a music level, and we would go to their house for cookouts and things. So this is a person, I did remarry someone that knew Missy, okay? And that knew my girls since they were really young. I can't imagine really ever trying to have a relationship with someone that wasn't a part of this from the start. Okay?
That makes sense.
Because, you can go on a date with a total stranger and 2 years down the road not really know who you're still dating, okay?
Right.
And so I'm very cautious about things like that.
Yeah.
I'm very critical.
Did she have any kids?
Yeah, she has 3.
So now y'all got a family
it's like the Brady Bunch.
Okay.
3 and 3, yeah.
8, you've got.
But her kids, she has 2 older kids that are grown up out of the house, and she has a younger son, and she's very she's very patient and very understanding. You know, I had a discussion with her before we ever made any large commitments or anything. I said, you know, this is always going to be a problem area. And I said, how you handle that is going to really, it's going to kind of play into this, because it's such a, it's a lingering issue. It's an unresolved issue.
It's just a black cloud that follows you.
And she's very patient, you know, with the kids. You have the typical resentment of kids, you know, I'm not going to listen to her, she's not my mom, all of these kinds of things, all of that, and it's all gone away. And but thankfully she's a very patient, very understanding person.
How long have y'all been married now?
For about a year and a half.
And were the girls happy for you, your girls?
They were happy that I found somebody, but I don't think they were happy about having that person in their life at that point.
Right.
So it was a pretty, you know, my problem is that I'm not a social person, and I don't go out with friends. I don't go to bars. I don't hang out with people. I'm pretty much I keep to myself. I don't have a social agenda whatsoever.
Go to work.
Never have. Okay. And so I was at the house one day, and I had cleaned it from top to bottom. The girls were gone, and I was sitting there just alone, and I was just like, you know, I'm lonely. And I'm scrolling through my phone, and I had her contact and her family's contact from before when we worked together in music, and I was like, you know, I'm going to text her and see if she wants to go eat something, and then it started from there.
Well.
So, but yeah, her, you know, the kids, it's all worked out for the better.
Good.
It really has.
I'm very glad to hear that.
No one will ever take Missy's place as their mother. No way.
Right.
And that's not the intention.
Right.
But at least I have someone here who is not critical of our experience, or jealous that she's not getting attention because this stuff's, you know, like right now we're working on the 5-year deal.
Yeah.
I got my phone media people and all this.
Yeah.
And she's very supportive, you know.
And you've got some love and support at home now, whereas before you were fighting that complicated grief by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you know, another thing about finding help or helpful resources is to connect with someone who has experienced something on a similar level with you.
Right.
Okay, bounce things off, but you know, connecting with anybody to talk about your problems. And like I said, I'm not a social person. I don't have. I had already had my friends over. We had drinks and would talk, and you know, we'd exhausted that, and that was kind of the end of it. But nobody to have a continual communication with about, hey, this is what I'm experiencing today.
Right, that's very important, because after this happened with my mom, a few months later, some people that I never even thought I'd have a friendship with, I started to bond with because we shared a loss, and we would start bouncing that off of each other. Well, how did you feel when you did this? And well, I went to a counselor. Well, yeah, I better try a counselor. Have you tried Grief Share? And so it was so comforting to have. And I don't want to say that I found pleasure in somebody else grieving, but I found like I wasn't alone in my grieving. And that was very important.
Yeah.
Did your girls have to ever go to counseling? Did you ever have them go to see a counselor? Or?
Yes.
Because they're going through complicated grief.
You know, you can't, as an adult, a counselor will tell you this. You cannot force anybody to go to counseling. And expect positive results. There is no way.
No way.
You can tell a child, hey, let's go down and see this counselor. Well, if you don't go about that, if they're not accepting of that, they may always have a bad view of counseling. Okay? They may think of that as something, it would be a complete turnoff. You have to almost wait till their back is against the wall with something that's unresolved. And you have to open the door to the counselor and say, look, this person helped me, And I know you don't like, you despise the idea, but I'm telling you, this person can give you some tools to sharpen your coping mechanisms and things.
Right.
You have to have coping mechanisms, and that's what they do. But you can't force feed it.
No.
And so my oldest one, my middle child, that had the hardest time initially.
Mm-hmm.
She went to counseling. My oldest, Hannah, she despised it. We went to a counseling session as a family,
Mm-hmm.
and she bolted out the door. Okay, she just ran out the door. Said, "I'm not doing this." Before even the first word was said.
Mm.
But what's crazy is that this same counselor that my children have worked with is the same person today, and they have a bond like this. And when anything happens in Hannah's life or in Allison's life, they can pick up the phone and call this person, and she will help them work through something that they need help with. And trust me, there have been several occasions, like,
I can only imagine with
several
teenage
bad,
girls.
Like this person's holding a gun to their head kind of thing.
Wow.
Where, like, I'm talking intervention type things, where my daughter had, reached out to this counselor who years ago had ran out the door, and now she wants to become a counselor.
Wow.
So she's getting her psychology degree and eventually going to work towards her master's and all of the certifications that she needs, because now she wants to help other people.
You have to be very proud of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Missy, I would think, would be so proud.
And I want to touch on something else. When you talk about trying to resolve and work your way through this,
Mm-hmm.
and you at some point you need to ask yourself, how would the deceased person feel about your reaction to their death? Okay?
Yeah.
How would the deceased person feel about the fact that you have backed yourself into a corner psychologically,
Mm-hmm.
speaking to some point of detriment? Okay?
Yeah.
And in my case, Missy, and I tell my girls this, Missy's not the type of person that would have, she wouldn't stand for something like that. Sadness and grief, that's all one thing. But she's the kind of person that would tell you, pick yourself up off the ground. Get up and you're better, you're stronger than this.
Yes.
You've had your chance to be sad. Now get your butt in gear and go out and do what it is that I would have expected from you if I would have been here. And I see Missy saying that to these girls, and I see her saying it to me too. So if you ask yourself, how would the deceased person respond to your
actions,
to your reactions of their death over a long period of time, that if I think most of those deceased people would tell you to get your act together. Okay?
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I hear my mom talk to me. I hear things all the time. She says, "Go on, life is for the living. It's just life, what happened, move on, make me proud." And I feel like with these things and telling her story and getting into complicated grief to help other people, that we are making them proud.
Yeah, make them proud.
Yeah.
Really?
Because we're still here.
This is a temporary place anyway.
Exactly.
This is a short-lived place. Why are we going to sit here and just dig ourselves a hole?
Right.
When we know that the deceased person would be just disgusted with that type of outlet.
Yeah, and our daughters, we see the future in their eyes, and we've got to, help them get there. They're at those ages, those teen, preteen, late teen ages, where they need all that we have to give them.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's all that we have, to put our grief maybe we do have to put that aside to help them for a time.
Absolutely.
And you've done such a great job, sounds like, of just getting through and managing and coping. So we went through some of the coping, seek professional help, and get checked for PTSD, because so many people probably have that and it's just going untreated, and how important that is. And what other coping mechanisms? You had mentioned having a friend.
Absolutely.
Somebody that's going through something similar, maybe.
Yep.
A loss. That is very important to communicate. Are there any other coping strategies you want to share?
Well, I mean, like, the the viewpoint of just seeing this world in a tragic sense, that
it's not all butterflies and bubbles.
Correct.
And
that is a
unfortunate
coping mechanism. You don't go to school. They don't teach you in school about bereavement.
No, they don't.
They don't teach you about grieving, and you can't really present the information to a person prior to it happening. You can only present it to them after the fact. And
I remember back, my mom's accident was July 29th, 2019. I remember just a few weeks before there had been a tragic accident, and I remember just laying there in bed reading about it, thinking, gosh, that's awful. I'm so glad nothing real tragic has ever hit me too close to home. And it was just about a week later.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, I shouldn't have even thought that.
Yeah. It's when the counselor. When I was in church, I had a really good friend. He was probably revered as the most Christian man I've ever met and known in my entire life. He was about 10 years older than me, and when he was young, he had cancer in his spine, some kind of cancerous tumor. And he prayed to God one day, and he said, he was younger. This was when he was in his teens. And he prayed to God one day. He said, God, he said, I'll tell you what. He said, if you'll cure me from this, I'll go to work for you for the rest of my life. And he was cured. The doctors don't know why or how, but he was cured. And that man went to work for the Lord from that day forward. He had my utmost respect as a Christian individual. I felt like I was jealous of him. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, about a few years ago, he came down with esophageal cancer.
Oh gosh.
And his wife, he married. He worked there in Midlothian. He lived in Midlothian, and his wife. Anyway, he decided to take the homeopathic approach with his cancer, and he forewent any form of modern treatment or anything, and he died one day. And I went to his funeral, and the preacher said something about my friend. I don't want to name him.
Right.
He said he questioned his faith there at the end. I didn't know what he was talking about. So, that went on, and then every Christmas, the Midlothian Police Department put together an angel tree ceremony for all the people who've lost loved ones under unusual circumstances. And my friend's wife was there, and I didn't, I knew why she was there. But I sat and talked to her, and come to find out, my friend had taken his life. It got to the point where he couldn't breathe, he couldn't swallow, and he went outside and took his life. And I didn't know that, so that was a shock to me. Well, the next Christmas, the Midlothian police has their angel tree ceremony, and I'm standing there, and this guy calls me by name. I didn't know who. I didn't know who he was. And I said, how do you know my name? Why are you here? And he said, well, his wife took his life. And it happened to be my counselor that I saw.
Oh, no.
She killed herself.
Oh, gosh.
So,
I'm so sorry.
I'm just like, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm. On the next episode of Think Theo. Well, Selwyn Jones, you are here today because of one person that you have lost.
You'll never forget the day when you heard about George Perry Floyd.
That's right.
You'll never forget the day.
Be sure to subscribe to my podcast and my video cast on YouTube, which will have exclusive content not available on the podcast.